right. Tracy Donegan. It's so funny how this episode kind of came to be. In episode 105, I talked with Dr. Sinead Dufour all about how we can use things like pain education and mindfulness to prepare for birth. And I have had some like idea like this kind of simmering in my head for years of, oh, I'm intimidated to create my own birth meditation. I don't know if I would do a good job of it. And so I've been thinking of like, who should I reach out to that already does a good job of this so that I can let listeners know of some of the resources out there. And so then when Sinead and I 2 episodes ago talked about this topic, and she shared that some of her research was done with you, with the company, I thought, oh my gosh, what a perfect time to reach out because I really want to include some of the meditations that Gentle Birth has created just to showcase the work that you've been doing. And so thanks so much, Tracy, for taking the time today to help just explain to people, why these resources might be helpful.
Well, thank you, first of all, for inviting me on. It is one of my favorite topics. So I guess for me, it was about how can we create childbirth education that isn't just focused on knowledge transfer. So it's not just about learning how, what are the stages of labor or, what are my choices for pain management. I was seeing more and more in the research that psychological strategies like meditation, hypnobirthing, were having quite an impact on how women were coping during labor. So, because it's all very well to have all of that knowledge, which is great to have, but when you're, as many of your viewers will probably be aware of, when you're in a stressful situation and labor can be quite stressful and emotions are running high, we lose access to our executive functioning. So, and our memory and all of that places where all of that great information is stored, it's offline. So I wanted to create a program that was really focused on positive birth, not one kind of birth. So this is not about you have to be having a home birth or a birth center or water birth. This was for women who were planning on an epidural, women who were planning maybe on a cesarean or had no choice in having a cesarean. I wanted those moms to have access to tools that could, it's what Sinead and I call it brain training for birth. So when I think about how much training an accountant goes through to become an accountant, and
Mhm.
I think it was something like 5,000 hours of study or something, or more, a million more than that. And then I'm like, okay, so these women are about to go through one of the biggest transitions of their adult life. We tell women all the time, motherhood is the most important job in the world.
Mhm.
And we weren't giving them any resources to really have to support their mental health and to prepare for birth, and even more so to prepare for postpartum and that huge transition. So I really focused on the fact that I wanted to create tools that were focused on positive birth as defined by mom, not me, not the OB or the midwife, but what is a positive birth? What does that mean for this woman? So I started off originally as a hypnobirthing teacher. I taught traditional Mongan method hypnobirthing for about a year, but I found it was a little restrictive at the time. We couldn't talk about pain.
Mhm.
And I'm like, come on here now. Like, I'm a midwife. I've seen a few births. Pain is subjective, but it's usually present in some form during labor because there's so much happening with the body and the baby and what's happening up here.
Mhm.
And it started to become more clear to me that what's happening upstairs in the brain is equally, if not more important than what's happening with the baby and your body, because that stress response can just shut everything down. And I think most people would be well aware of the fight or flight response, and that's not what we want in labor. So I taught hypnobirthing for about a year, and then I was looking at the research around meditation and sports psychology because that really got, I don't want to be stereotyping here, but it got the dads engaged because we were speaking their language. We've got, it's by the time this episode comes out, we'll have just had the Super Bowl, and we look at the kind of mental training that professional athletes go through when they are preparing for a big event. And I thought, this is a huge event. Why aren't we helping moms with all of these different modalities? And for me, the mindfulness aspect was it was less to do with pain management, although it is associated with more coping skills and less pain perception. For me, it was to have these tools after when we're postpartum and you're sitting up at 4 a.m. having your baby's third or fourth feed. You're only back from the hospital. You are exhausted. Your mind is telling you all kinds of things about why you should stop and why this is too hard. So having that mindfulness aspect and that ability just to stop and to bring that executive function back online so that moms can make decisions that would support their parenting goals, their breastfeeding goals. So for me, it was never really about the pain management. It was because lots of women will go through labor, have an epidural or have a cesarean and come out of it thinking that was no big deal.
Mhm.
But as we're seeing, and I'm sure it's probably similar in Canada, that the increase in the medicalization of birth and the increase in birth trauma was very concerning. So for me, where I really saw the rubber meet the road was when I would talk to gentle birth moms who would, on paper, their birth looked quite traumatic. Like a lot happened, and for me thinking, oh, I'm how is she going to cope with this? And kind of the end of the email said, all of your tools really helped me. I was able to kind of bring myself back into the moment, focus on all the things I could control. This is
Mhm.
one of our mantras is, control the controllables. And anything you can't control, we've got to just let that go. And they were bouncing back or kind of recovering from very difficult birth experiences without what I was seeing with other moms who hadn't had access to that kind of training and daily practices. And it is a commitment. And sometimes moms will say, I opened my app today and it has, daily recommendations. So, and it's based on your due date. So you're not listening to the one CD, one MP3 for your whole pregnancy. And we have pelvic floor exercises as well that moms can use. So they might have, if they join the app at, let's say, 12 weeks, they can join it as early as they want. And their training will be different and it will be tailored to that part of pregnancy. So there was no point in like a mom who is like just 8 weeks pregnant practicing a birth rehearsal when you're like, I just want to get through the first trimester. I apologize, I'm going to switch off my Slack here. That is beeping away. Um, so I wanted to make sure that parents had these tools that they could, I mean, really cope with anything that came their way. And that was a big ask. But looking at I guess the neuroplasticity around pregnancy, we have this huge opportunity to like the brain structure is changing. So I thought, well, why wouldn't we, take advantage of this optimal time for brain changes? And we know that meditation increases like the real estate in the brain and areas that are associated with mood. And so for me, it was, yeah, this is a no-brainer. We need women having these tools.
And it's interesting. So, like, as a pelvic health physiotherapist, most people seek out someone like us in pregnancy because they're thinking of the pelvic floor, right? So you're hearing so much more information, and I think, like you said, there's more information, there's more access now, and I think that's all well-intentioned information because I think you hear all these women saying, "I wish I would have had that information when I was younger," and so I think this increase in information, well intentioned, is getting people a bit stuck in the weeds, but also just kind of like almost like a recipe that they think they need to follow. And so when they come to see someone like myself, I always ask, what brings you here? And oh, my friends told me or my midwife told me that this would be helpful to prepare for birth. Okay, I always say blab out loud for me a little bit. Like, what are the things that you've heard, or what are the things you're nervous about? Because I just want to see where they're at, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of them are very much interested in, like, I don't want to tear, or I want to recover the best that I can. And I've always been someone very interested in the nervous system. And I often use the example that when someone comes in that works in the birth world, labor and delivery nurses, um, residents, like family doctor residents, like anyone that comes in that has seen birth before, I've asked them, okay, why are you here? Because you are considered an expert. So what's missing that would bring you in here? And I find it's always some sort of rendition of this. We watch women have babies all the time, and some women fight it. And I can see that that possibly makes that harder, longer, more trauma, more interventions. And there's also some women that have done something to work with their body. And they're very curious as like, what is that? Is that, will you tell me what that is, Melissa? But this is why that's my kind of window into describe, like, there's not one thing, but there's, and you have to go higher up. Like, you have to understand how your brain works, how your nervous system works, how that all works with pain. And I think that then some of these downstream effects, like tearing or episiotomy, like they don't overthink those. Right. And
Yeah.
so I think that some people come in with an understanding, and some people it's a little bit more of a stretch. And I think like that's where something like mindfulness or meditation often comes in, because I don't want to start with, okay, let's start you on meditation, because I often you lose them. I do, because they're like, did you hear me, Melissa? I'm here for my pelvic floor. I'm not here for that stuff. And so I feel like I have to almost like meet them where they're at and gently kind of like add that. And so because you're right, it can be you get all sorts of, let's say, resistance, kind of like, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. And I like, there's lots of pain medication options right now. And I'm not into hypnobirthing. Like, and so I'm sure you've heard all of that. Right?
Yes, yeah. And it's like and I'm sure you see this in your work as well, where, you know, moms today, they're working full time. They may be taking care of aging parents. They have a full schedule. So to throw out, oh, you got to take a hypnobirthing class as well. They're
Mhm.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
because there's this association of woo or new age, and which is one of the reasons when I was developing gentle birth, it was I wanted to bring the brain science into it.
Mhm.
So like if I was teaching a class and I have, especially kind of the dads, I'm in an area here where lots of engineers, and that's how their brain works. They want to say, well, what is it doing? So when I start talking about, well, how meditation affects, these parts of the brain and pain perception and coping mechanisms, they're all on board. But we see so many women who are having they're disconnected from the neck down. So everything is happening up here. They've got the knowledge, but it's the stress as well and worry about, birth and parenting, and helping them understand that worry, those thoughts you're having, don't stay up there, because all of that stress comes into your body and your baby is marinating in stress hormones. Who wants that?
Mhm.
So when I'm sharing with parents as well that this is not just about you. So there is really lovely research out there showing how even like moms who practice meditation, and I'm talking about 15 minutes a day, like
Mhm.
really get off TikTok for 15 minutes, invest in your own health and your baby's future health. Because what they're showing in these studies, it is if we are, cutting short a stressed response. So there has to be an awareness of, I'm feeling stressed, first of all. When we notice we're having that stress response, then we can do something about it. And when we do something about it, we can realize then, okay, so as much as possible now, I don't want to marinate my baby's brain in stress hormones, because that changes the architecture of my baby's brain. It changes how the coping mechanisms that my baby's going to develop as they grow. So there was a lovely study done in San Francisco with moms who were quite a vulnerable demographic, getting ready to give birth. They did, I think, a 6 weeks or 8 weeks worth of mindfulness practice, again, about 15 minutes a day. and it changed their babies. When they measured the baby's stress response a couple of months after birth, they showed that the babies returned to like a healthy baseline response far more quickly than moms who hadn't had access to this kind of modality, which I think is so it means we're not just affecting this mom's physical and mental state, we're affecting the next generation. And I think that's huge. And that is something that we have got to talk more about, the epigenetics. And
Mhm.
I think it's a wasted opportunity. We can affect the next generation in such a positive way. And I think the way the world is today, I think we could all do with, children growing up with more coping skills,
Mhm.
more self-compassion, and more compassion for others. And that's all kind of tied into the mindfulness aspect of it.
Yeah, and when you talk about athletes, I think sometimes you just have to be able to make those, let's say, analogies or parallels with whoever you're talking with. I find like I might explain to an athlete or someone else. Think of an athlete that trains for high intensity. Like they need to be really good at high intensity, and they will train that, and they will train that well. And that's appropriate for their race or their competition. But what you're looking for in birth is actually the complete opposite. This is something that's more of a let go, a surrender, allow. And so if you don't do that in your life, I wouldn't expect that you're good at it. Just like I wouldn't expect the athlete to nail the competition if they don't train for it. And so it's okay that you don't do
Yeah.
meditation or mindfulness or relaxation or breathing. But we could start, right? And because like let's train for what's coming up. Because I think sometimes it's like, you don't know me. I am type A. I don't relax. And that's okay. You probably need to do that in your life a lot, but it's just not what's appropriate for this. And so I think it's just, I think sometimes people just have to start it with an open mind, right?
Exactly. And that's why I like when I'm talking to moms about the GentleBirth app and the program, I'm really because there is a lot of moms have already tried meditation and they've had a bad experience. They've
Mhm.
been, told to sit in the dark room for a half an hour and chant and they're like, am I doing it right? My mind keeps
Mhm.
going. So when we look at the sports aspect of it, it's 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 the training aspect for the sports, but it's the mental side of it. It's the self-talk. What are the like when that athlete is, you're doing an Ironman, and you're halfway through and you're tired, how do you keep going? What are those resources that you've got access to? And our brains are like hardwired to go to worst case scenario, and it's a protective mechanism. So, but it's not helpful in pregnancy, and it's really not helpful during labor that our brain is in alarm state because first of all, it takes up such a huge amount of energy for the body to be in that stress response. And like so if you're a first time mom and you have a labor that, might be 18 hours or so, you're worn out in the first 2 hours of labor because you're so stressed. So if we can manage that emotional arousal in the beginning, then their pain perception changes and in the event something came up out of left field that maybe they weren't expecting, they have tools, they have resources to access, and they have a very different mindset. They have a mindset of acceptance, of being able to let go of some of the control. Because birth itself, it's a day in your life, an important day in your life. But that mental aspect, postpartum, it'll make or break you.
Mhm.
So, and as you said, and I think every single mom I've ever worked with has been type A. I think we're just this is, I think
Mhm.
people who are in this business are probably quite type A as well.
Mhm.
It is a practice to allow and to accept and not and like coming into the kind of the Buddhist practice of, pushing against anything we don't like and then being upset when we don't get what we want or we get what we don't want, and having the skills to be able to say, you know what, this was how it unfolded. I did as much as I could, and I'm in a place of peace with what happened. And being able to move into parenthood in a sense of peace, I think for especially for, moms here in the US who probably don't get much maternity leave, who are
Mm,
trying to get back to work, like they barely have time to recover to get back to work. For me, it was that kind of, how can we help them have a positive birth? Because that just sets them up with such an advantage as new moms and new dads, to have those skills, because there is going to be a lot of other difficult, stressful situations that are going to come up. That, like, I would love to see these tools being taught in kindergarten.
mm,
We don't teach emotional regulation. So they're going to have the stress of maybe a baby not sleeping. They're going to have the stress of, that day when the toddler throws your phone down the toilet. Um, Relationship difficulties, parents passing. There's a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline. This is a great time to start to build those skills. So you have them. These are skills they will be for life.
mm.
The double hip squeeze, the double hip squeeze is brilliant in labor. I love it, but it's not going to do a damn thing for you at 4 a.m. when your baby won't latch.
Mhm. It's funny. I often use an analogy. Because when people come in pregnancy, and again, they're interested in how do I prepare, and I say, I explain kind of like, the sensations and the pain that you get that are very normal and natural in birth create a fight or flight response. Like it's you can't not have that fight or flight response, and you can't really just turn that off. You can't turn that off, but you can do things to like calm your body and like we said, relax. But I said in the hardest time of your maybe arguably of your life, it's not easy to bring up those relaxation responses if you kind of haven't worked on that. And I said use the example when COVID hit. My husband and I both lost our job because we work in a clinic and all clinics shut down. And it was a pressure cooker of stress. Our kids were home from daycare and school. We were supposed to try to figure out how to homeschool them and figure out how to make money and just COVID. And I said, and that surrounding or that stimulus around me made me yell at my kids a lot. I couldn't help it. I didn't want to yell at my kids. They did nothing wrong. And in your birth, when you get a lot of sensation of pain, it's natural to want to fight it, and it's even though you don't want to, it's very hard not to. And I said I noticed that I couldn't help it. I could not help the yelling in the COVID situation. My husband and I decided at that time to hold each other accountable to some meditation. The goal of the meditation was to bring us way like farther down in our kind of intensity in our body so that we could measure our response more when the kids stayed annoying, like when they blowed their whistles and yelled and had mess. Like we couldn't change them. They're little kids. And same in your birth, like you can't take away pain. You can't take away the sensations, but to learn how to measure that. And I knew that I needed to not yell at them and I couldn't help it. And I wouldn't expect that you would be able to relax if you haven't practiced that, and so I think it's kind of like you can
Yeah,
tell
it's
someone
like
to
any.
relax and surrender all you want, but if it's not something that you've practiced, I don't think it's easy.
No, and especially as people think that, oh, relaxation, I can relax. I relax in front of the TV, whatever. I'm
Mm,
like, relaxing your body is one thing.
mhm,
Relaxing up here,
mhm,
noticing the thought, not attaching to the thought, not following a thought down a rabbit hole or taking you off to stress town, that is a skill that has to be built. And just on the fight or flight response and the pain response, I have seen some amazing births where I have seen no stress response,
mm,
where I have been with a mom where you could only tell she was having a surge or a contraction was because every, 3 minutes now, she closes her eyes and she breathes really
mm,
deeply. And then she's walking around like, what are we having for lunch?
mhm,
So and again, like it's some people are very, so there's a meditation part of it. There's the hypnosis part of it as well, which is a hypnosis and meditation are two completely different modalities and work on different parts of the brain. Hypnosis, some people are just great at it. It's like some people are born, you're naturally a good dancer or a good singer. I'm not either. But when it comes to hypnosis, I'm a really good hypnotic subject, to the
mm.
point where I was trying to do my gallbladder surgery a couple of years ago with hypnosis, and they would not. hear of it. And I was like, let me do this. I want to train. I want to do it.
Mm.
I've seen enough of this over the years to know how powerful it can be. And they weren't having any of it. But before I went in for the actual surgery, and they were giving me, about to give me meds for the pre-surgery and checking my vitals and everything. And the staff were quite concerned that maybe I had taken something because I was so relaxed
Mm.
before I went into surgery. I was like snoozing, and they had to, like, the anesthesiologist that came out to meet me like had to wake me up. And he's like, this is the first time I've ever had to wake somebody up before I took them into
Wow.
theater, because everyone is usually, stressed, and but I had prepared for that. But they kept asking me, did you take even herbal remedies? You didn't take anything? And I'm like, no, headphones on, see you later. And yeah, it is just, and not everyone will have that response. So that's where I think having the mindfulness and the meditation aspect of it is really helpful, because with the hypnosis, you literally press play, you drift off, you don't even have to hear any of it, which of course is a question that always comes up. I didn't hear any of it. Is it still working? Is it still
Mm.
going in? So hypnosis is very passive. You don't have to remember any of it. And whereas meditation, and that's why the meditations within the app are much shorter, because you are training your brain to come back to focus, because it will drift. And that's just how the mind works. That mind wandering normally takes us to very stressful places. If it took us off to, tropical beaches, that would be lovely, but it doesn't.
Mhm.
So for me, that aspect of that, the meditation is the harder part, because even if it's only a 10-minute meditation, during your lunch today, that you have to be awake, aware, and alert. So you can notice when your mind has gone off to stress town, or your mind has gone to, what happened, in work yesterday, or what I'm doing next month. And so the mind is a great time traveler, but tends to take us to stressful places. But once we have that awareness, then we realize, oh, there I go again. I'm off to Stress Town. I'm not going to stay there. I'm going to bring it back, and I'm going to take it back to what the sensations in my body or my breath. And that's the moment of mindfulness. And that's the training, noticing and bringing it back, and accepting and not beating yourself up, because it's not, meditation is not easy. And I think, again, the type A's on the planet are quite quick to beat ourselves up for not doing it perfectly. And I think that's part of why I love meditation. Life, birth, it's messy. None of it's easy. So we do what we can with the tools that we have, and we give ourselves that bit of compassion, that we're human beings having this human experience on a rock flying through the universe.
Mhm.
It's really, we can make birth just a really, really lovely experience by helping moms develop these skills in pregnancy.
Absolutely. So let's say there's people listening to this, and obviously one of the reasons that I wanted to do this is to, because a lot of people are like, okay, 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 you got me, I'll try, but then they're kind of like, but then where do I go, right? Where do I look this up? And that's why I wanted to talk to you so that you could explain a little bit about the app. So let's say that there's some people listening that are like, okay, fine, I'm willing to try it. Can you just describe, obviously they need to go to the app to look at it, but will you just give a little picture of like what does that look like and where does someone start and do they follow things sequentially or do they, just can you talk a little bit about just describe what someone's going to see when they go to your app?
Absolutely. So when they sign up for the app, they're going to go through kind of an onboarding, and they'll put in what their due date is. So then that kind of feeds into our algorithm that tells us, okay, so because somebody joining at 8 weeks is going to be in a very different position to someone who's joining at maybe 30 weeks or 38 weeks. And so their training will be very different. So early on in pregnancy, the training as such, it's very light. So they might be doing something like like a short meditation on confidence, or because the first trimester being that, time when there's a lot of stress around, getting to that 12 weeks. So it's about confidence, and they might do some affirmations. So I didn't want people feeling like, oh, I'm only 8 weeks, look at all the homework I have to do.
Mm.
So as it builds then through their pregnancy, and they'll choose the journey that that they're on, I guess, at the moment. So in early pregnancy, most moms will maybe on the, the vaginal birth journey. So they will start to see daily recommendations that will come up for every single day. That will be, they might have, 10 minutes of affirmations, a 5-minute breathing exercise, pelvic floor exercise, and they'll have a longer hypnobirthing kind of hypnobirthing session that I always suggest you just play that at nighttime when you go to bed. It'll help you sleep really well. And if they can build it into their schedule, so I will usually say to moms who I know are already overscheduled, do your 5 minutes affirmations before you get out of bed in the morning, or your breathing. And then at lunchtime, do a 10-minute meditation. It'll kind of reboot you for the rest of the day. Keep your hypnobirthing for bedtime or, weekend naps. The app also has a book and a workbook as well. So they are getting really good evidence-based information throughout. But you will have moms who maybe they know they're going for VBAC, so that the vaginal birth after cesarean. So they will choose the VBAC journey, or they're having twins. They're going to choose the twin journey. So the content will be different based on their, or planned cesarean, it'll all be different. So if a mom is having a planned cesarean, she's never going to see content coming up about, pushing in labor. So it's very personalized and individualized for that mom's journey. So and then we recently introduced another feature, which is we have a surge timer, a contraction timer that is, and it's free, so anyone can download it. It's also part of the paid app as well, where you, as mom goes through the different contractions, and she will rate the power of that contraction. And based on how she has rated that, if it was, gentle or was intense or powerful, the next meditation or the next kind of affirmation that comes up in my voice will be based on what she has already said. So she's already said that was really strong. So I'm going to tell her that was a really strong one. That wasn't that, and how well you're doing. And every single surge, she's getting guided audio through those surges. Then we have another feature, which is mindfulness. So we know that moms are supposed to start checking in with baby's movements from about 26 to 28 weeks, just to kind of connect in with, okay, how is baby moving today? Has baby's pattern of movements changed? Because there's a lot of misinformation out there about, at the end of pregnancy in particular, that, babies don't have much room, so they get a lot quieter in the last few weeks. We should still be seeing whatever that normal pattern is for that baby. So it mightn't be as pronounced, because yes, they have got that, they're squished a little bit more, but we should still see a similar pattern. And if not, that we are telling moms, you don't stay home and drink iced water or have some orange juice, because which is unfortunately even what some care providers are saying, like some of the nurses are saying, have something to drink, call us back in half an hour. I'm like, no, if you're concerned if baby's movements have changed significantly, please go in. Hopefully it's going to be nothing, but we would rather err on the side of caution, especially in those last few weeks. And then as mom, they will have their labor content, which is like specifically curated, and they'll have content that is for if mom decides halfway through an epidural feels like a good idea right now. They'll also have audio companions to that epidural. There's the epidural content is fantastic for anyone who has. Oftentimes, moms will get the shakes with the epidural, and it can be quite stressful. And if mom is fighting it, she's going to be doubly sore tomorrow. So we have this nice, it's a hypnobirthing session that is specifically for while you're waiting to get your epidural. And then when they have their epidural and they're settled, then they go off and snooze and they've got another one in their ear, just to remind them how well they're doing, that there is no place for guilt or anything. You're going to get ready to meet your baby. And then postpartum, once mom has had her baby, then she gets to change her journey then to immediate postpartum. And she'll choose the journey that is based on whether she is breastfeeding or if she is formula feeding. Because again, it's like I wanted to be as inclusive
Mhm.
of all experiences as I could because I get there's just too much guilt out there and moms not getting the support that they needed. So they'll go through a couple of weeks of postpartum, which is very different, especially with a mom who's just had her first baby. When your first baby, you can lie on the couch and you can listen to your hypnobirthing for hours because you have time. Postpartum with a newborn and you're exhausted, people are like, how am I supposed to do this? Like, well, hopefully all the training you've done the last couple of months is all going to feed into that now. This is where really that the rubber meets the road for you. But they will still have short affirmations, short meditations that they can use with baby. So sit with your baby, and we do a meditation that is involving the baby as well. And after they've gone through kind of that immediate postpartum for healing and recovery, then a lot of moms will either go on to the body positive program, which is a 12-week program focused on feeling well, your changing relationship with your new body. And it focuses on, there's quite a bit of hypnosis on it, on, eating well, starting to get back into gentle exercise. And because over the years, I'd had so many moms come to me and ask me, would I do a weight loss program for
Mm.
postpartum? And I was like, I kept being asked, and I was like, okay, obviously there's something out here that, but I was like, no, 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 no. We've got to do this in a healthy way.
Mhm.
So I want moms, looking at their body, loving what their body has done at this time, and really creating that new relationship with their body and that self-compassion that you have grown a human being for the last 9 months. Like, let's take a beat here and enjoy your baby and take away all of that pressure. And then moms usually will finish that and then they'll go on to there's just a section then for women's wellness. So I have moms that are still using the app 2 years later because it helps them sleep, and they play the recordings to their to their 2-year-olds because the 2-year-olds have associated my voice with sleep
Mhm.
and relaxation. So I'm like, great.
That's great. It sounds like a great resource. And I am going to thank you for sharing. I think I have 3 episodes that I am going to, just for people that are listening, this will be a standalone episode, and then I'm going to have include 3 bonus episodes after this that are the individual meditations that your team has shared with me. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and there's for anyone who is, we do have some instructors in Canada who
Mhm.
teach live gentle birth classes, and there is also it is a gentle birth master class that they can do through the app, and it is ridiculously affordable
Mhm.
and it is about, I think it's about 10 hours of content, so you can dip in and out of it throughout your pregnancy. And there's, kind of like a mini class for partners who don't want to sit through the 10 hours of content, but it's a little mini master class of coping skills for birth partners. And we also included then the some of the class that I had created for the research with Sinead on
Mhm.
the pain education as well. So it's really a brilliant resource for anyone who wants to kind of dip their toes into, having a positive birth and starting off the next part of this journey, feeling good.
Well, what a cool resource. I can imagine this was not built overnight. I can imagine how much work this has been. So I appreciate all you're doing.
Yeah, it's and thanks for the opportunity to come on and chat. As you can tell, I'll I'll keep going if you don't cut me off because it is really a phenomenal resource.
Absolutely. I can't wait to share it with my clients, and I hope that some other people listen to this too and open their mind to something different that maybe they haven't done before. I think we all, I feel like one of the things that my kids are starting to learn more in school is the term growth mindset, like just being open to new things. And so I think, just try it. Try it with an open mind, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that is like if I meet somebody in the supermarket and I'm admiring their beautiful bump, I'm like, how are you sleeping? Because that's the big thing that everyone's is
Mm,
struggling with, no matter what kind of birth you're planning or your type A or type Z personality, no one's sleeping in those last few weeks. So I will say, look, just use it for sleep. And once they're like, oh, I had the best sleep ever, and then they will dip into some of the other content as well.
mm,
And there
mhm.
is There's content for a positive induction. Induction rates are, significantly rising, and there's ways to make induction a positive experience as well.
Mhm.
So,
That's great.
yeah.
I love that it's, like you said, very inclusive and not that there's a right way to have a birth and a wrong way. Because I do think that is a big message for people is that, oh, I can't do this if I'm having a C-section, or this doesn't go along with induction. So I think it's great that that's all included.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your
Yeah.
time,
Oh,
Tracy. I
okay, cool.
appreciate your time and you. So thank you so much.